Charlie.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Jim. Jim, thank you so much for the invite here. This is a real pleasure. And it's not fair. I think he did give me a topic. So it's just not random thoughts here on anything that I chose.
Some suggestions.
All right, you did give me some suggestions, and the suggestions are really around as a professional angel, and I've been a professional angel investor for almost 20 years, is what are the criteria that I use for an investment? And I've invested in well over 20 deals over that time frame. And my investment philosophy, I think that you've had a fellow here named Sig Mosley of Imlay Investments. I don't know, was he in this class?
No.
No, okay. He's was one of our more prominent investors, but he shares a different philosophy of investing in angel deals or startups, if you will, than I do. So it's a pleasure to be here. And Jim told me, he gave me sort of a warning that this is your last day. All right, so I didn't know if I was going to get a bunch of people, sort of like last day of school, you know, when we were in grammar school, you know, where no one's paying attention to anything. All right, so I'm going to try my best to keep your attention here. But first I wanted to tell you is how does somebody get into angel investing? Or at least I'm not sure how someone does, but I'm sure how I did. And what I did is I started back in the mid-'70s. I came out of the University of Miami with an accounting degree and went to work for a small accounting firm and realized within a very short amount of time that that was not going to be my future. It was more fun to study accounting than it was to do accounting. But it was a good discipline to know. And so because of that anxiousness that I had at that time, career-wise, within a very short amount of time I got involved with looking for ways to computerize the office. And back then, in the mid-'70s, it was the introduction of the IBM System 32, which was the first affordable small business computer. It was a mini computer. That's when mini computers came on. And so all of a sudden, first-time automation moved from big companies down to mid-sized companies and small companies. And just as a side note, the first affordable small business computer was a 64K of RAM, a 5-megabyte disk that was literally this big inside the cabinet. It had a 50-line per minute printer and a 64K green screen, and it cost $44,000. Okay, and that was billed as the first affordable small business computer, and we laugh at that today, thinking just what you can buy. But anyway, I wound up running into my first mentor by looking at computers, and it was a fellow named Richard Brock, who was a brilliant entrepreneur. He was the first entrepreneur I think I ever ran into in my life, and I literally fell in love with the guy. Entrepreneurs have he was very intelligent, he was energetic, he was a visionary. I mean, I didn't run into people like that in my life. And I just latched onto this guy, and we became partners. And in that first business, we actually wrote and sold software to CPAs. So although I didn't practice CPA, being a CPA, I actually sold software to them and developed software for them and automated their offices. We became the biggest in that business. And at 28 years old, we wound up selling that business, and I became a millionaire at 28 years old, which for a guy that came from a blue-collar background, that was pretty amazing to me that could happen. But that sort of launched me into a new career. I got interested with my second mentor. I let go of the entrepreneur guy, and I latched onto this corporate guy who taught me how to be a general manager of companies. And it was a skill, a management skill that I really I sought after, because our company, when we sold it, had over 200 employees. And we were, as my partner said, you know, management is basically babysitting. You know, I don't really want to do any of that. Well, that was his entrepreneurial background. But for me, I said, there's something to this. And so I sort of dropped Richard and moved on to this guy named Jim Porter, who became my mentor. And from there, he taught me how to manage companies. And then we got taken over by another company called Sterling Software, and I wound up being one of their 5 guys running this company called Sterling Software, which was an enterprise. And I learned how to build an enterprise from the next man, who was my mentor, called Sterling Williams. So mentorship is something that I recommend that you do. actively, because I really believe that that's what separates the winners from the not so winners. I mean, you could succeed, but I think you can succeed much more quickly and much more effectively with mentors. And then then I decided to leave corporations because I missed entrepreneuring. And I went back and I ran a turnaround for a startup, and that's where I met, by the way, Sig Mosley. He was invested in the deal, and I did it, and I realized, you know, this is something that I've done years ago. I'm doing the same thing, handling the same problems. It just didn't feel right to me. It wasn't motivating for me. And I came to understand a metaphor that the medical profession uses. And it's something that I now have followed in anything that I do. And the medical profession uses a metaphor for growth, personal growth, that says, watch one, do one, teach one. Watch one, do one, teach one. That's how they learn how to operate or do whatever they do. And to me, it was and is to this day a wonderful metaphor for personal growth. That's how you know if you're moving along. Now, we spend a lot of time in the do one stage, but we need to move out of that. And here's what I did. I realized that it wasn't the right place for me when I got into this turnaround that I talked about. And so I decided I'm going to get into venture capital. And I went to San Francisco and I ran around and I learned what venture capital was all about, because I wanted to help entrepreneurs, and I thought that was the outlet for me. I didn't break into venture capital. In fact, I found out venture capitalists were mostly finance guys. So it's managed equities is what it is that are illiquid, and I wasn't a finance guy. I was an operator. And so I had somebody approach me. This is a funny way to get into this business, but I had somebody approach me that was a branch manager for me and said, I want to start a company, and I want you to be the CEO. So we started a company, and it was in professional services, information technology professional service. Start this company. We're about a year into it. I'm about $150,000 invested in the deal. I'm running it. My partner was the sales manager, and we came to blows. She quit. I'm sitting in a windowless office, literally, of sublease space, saying, now what do I do? And I got a call at that time from a guy that used to be a sales manager for me, national sales manager. He says, you know, I'm looking for a job. You're pretty well networked. Maybe you could help me out. So he came by, we had lunch, and it struck me. I said, you know, instead of looking for a job, I said, you really know who you are, and you seem to have a vision for what you would create. Why don't you start a company? Why don't you be a CEO instead of a salesman? And he said, oh, I don't want to do that. That's too hard. And I said, no, I could really help you, and this was something I think you would enjoy. And he said, well, what kind of company would I start? And I said, I just happen to have one. And his name is Bob Lasher. He's still a partner of mine, and he took over this company, and he did very, very well with it. And that was my first investment. That's when I went from this do to teach. And it was really a smooth transition. At that time, this is in the early 90s, there was this sort of evil empire that everybody was looking towards, this impending event called year 2000, and that all the computers in the world were going to shut off in year 2000. Well, that made for a very vibrant professional services market. So I had this idea. I said, you know, if I create the infrastructure for professional services, I bet you I could start a lot of professional services companies in different segments. And that's what I did. So I started the first professional services incubator. We had HR, had all the legal contracts, we had all the billing systems in the background and collections, all the accounting. And so if you wanted to start a company in professional services, within 24 hours we could start a company, have it funded, and you'd be in business. And that's what we did. And that was how I went through the 90s actually doing angel investing. It was very focused on a particular segment. Worked out really well. Well, then the dot-com, then the other thing that happened too is necessity is the mother of invention. Another lesson learned is I needed cash. I was used to making money, and now I'm not making anything, and I'm investing in everything. Well, professional services is a good cash flow business. So I had good cash flow coming out of the businesses. And at the same time, we had an exit opportunity for capital gains. So it was like, have your cake and eat it too. And so that's how I sort of made my way, and I'd started to actually accumulate cash, and it worked out well. Then the internet bust and year 2000 came, which ended this great run that I had. And so I restarted under a new name called Paparelli Ventures, which is what I'm doing today. And I also changed from service as a service to service as a product. And that's when I got into software as a service, which many of you are familiar with now. We all use those things on Google, you know, from a consumer standpoint, and also see them in business now. I'm invested there. And I invested in two companies. One was Tax Partners, which was very, very successful in doing sales tax automation for telecommunication companies. Another one that I'm invested in now called iPartners, which is doing software as a service in business intelligence for property and casualty companies. The other thing that I did is I went back to my roots with a product company called Torad Engineering, which I'm also invested now in a very big way. And it is an invention. It's a novel rotary machine that will do can be a compressor, an internal combustion engine, or an expander for heat recovery. Last night, just to let you know, is we closed, we topped off a $1.1 million round for that company with a $400,000 investment. And total investment in that company, Torad Engineering, now is $3.1 million, which I think, as far as I can see, is probably the biggest angel investment in Atlanta at this time. It may be the biggest angel investment in the Southeast at $3.1 million. So it's a sizable technology. So that's how I got into angel investing. That kind of brings us up to date. But there's two different, I noticed I was out in Silicon Valley last week, for a week, and met several prominent angels and many venture capitalists. And there's really two different investment philosophies when it comes to startups. One is what's called the spray and pray. All right? Now this is what these guys, these angel investors, and I'm talking anywhere, Jim and I were talking, and it could be guys that are in their late 20s that have cashed out, you know, could be like a Zuckerberg, for example, all the way up to people that are in sort of their mid-30s, late 30s that are still angels. They've made a lot of money, they've done well, and they want to put a portion of that back into their community. So they're angel investing. The spray and pray guys out there, what they do is they'll throw $100,000 at just about anything. And they just figure that if they're just in enough deals, one guy's been doing it for 2 years, he's in 60 deals. 2 years, 60 deals. He's certainly not evaluating these things at a deep level. He's not working with these people. He's just like 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, 100. There he goes. Something's going to hit, and if something hits, he'll make a lot of money. That's how he looks. That's called the spray and pray sort of philosophy. The other one, the one that I use is, and this is my term, I don't know if it's true, but I call it the stay and pray. And this one is different in that I invest, it's more like a Warren Buffett approach. Instead of being in a sort of what's called a balanced portfolio approach, I really look for the deal, and I put a lot of money into it, and I go very deep with the deal. So I stay with the deal, I get involved with it, I stay with it, and I stay with it all the way through exit. That's what I'm doing. Now, I'm not operating it, but I am the chairman of the board, and I am involved with the entrepreneur at a very deep level. See, because private equity investments, as far as I'm concerned, they are absolutely illiquid. Imagine, you put your money in something, the worst thing that you can be is a minority shareholder in a closely held corporation. That's a tough place to be. Once you're in, you spend the rest of your life trying to get out. That's angel investing. Now, not only are these things illiquid, but even worse, they are relationship-centric. That entrepreneur is the key to the deal. It's the key to success. So it's really all, when I look at investing, it's really all about the people. It's sort of these ordinary yet extraordinary people who have been, I see it as called by God to do this because they've been given this unique vision, and they have this, and they've been given a great commitment that they have personally, and they are charged with really building a great company. And that's what it is to be an entrepreneur. So what I want to talk about today is the two elements of private equity investment, or angel investing, if you will. And the two elements are, one, people. That's one thing that I do. That's part of my evaluation. I have 4 criteria to evaluate people. These are high-level criteria that I use. And the second is, how do I evaluate the economic opportunity? And I have 4 criteria for that. So at the very highest level, what I look for in people is, it's very simple. Do I get a good first impression of the entrepreneur after talking to him for a while? Is it someone that I can trust, and is it someone who is capable? That's at highest level. Is it someone I can trust? Is it someone who is capable? I'm going to put a lot of money with this person, and I'm not going to be there all the time. And this is hard-earned money. This is my money. This is, and I'm managing a fund. This is my money. If I lose it, it's gone. So I really have to trust this person. Is he going to watch after it and appreciate it as much as I do for what it took to work for it? The second is on the economic opportunity. The high-level cut point for that would be, does the economic opportunity make sense to me? Does it appeal to my intuitive business judgment and to my greed instinct? Right? So does it, now we're looking at the economic opportunity. Does it make sense? And do you feel like, you've seen deals probably in your life where you feel like you've had stockbrokers calling you and saying, this thing's taken off. Well, he's going after your greed instinct, that you feel like if you don't get in now, you're going to miss out. And it has to have those two elements, these deals on economic side. So let's get into the criteria. The 4 criteria for an entrepreneur that I use is, the first one is this guy's, my question is this guy's or gal's destiny to be an entrepreneur? In other words, I believe in destiny. I'm going to be 58 in another week, I think. And in my lifetime, I've seen people who are really bright, doing really well, working really hard rather, not succeed. And then I've seen people who have the same set of skills and they succeed wildly. It seems to come down to sort of some randomness and timing. I'm not saying you shouldn't have the right elements, but I don't think the right elements are a guarantee for future success. They can increase your risk of success, but there is a destiny element to this thing. And what I do is I actually try to discover that by doing a very detailed interview with the entrepreneur. So they come in and they got their deck and they want to show me their company. And the first thing I do is I start talking about their childhood. And I move them all the way from childhood up to the present time. And I learn exactly how they've been thinking, how they relate to others, how they relate to their family, the businesses that they chose to be in, the decisions that they've made as they've gone through life. And you could actually see a pattern on how somebody is actually called to this entrepreneurism, or see a pattern where it's just really not a fit. Yes, ma'am. So the question is am I looking for when I'm looking for their destiny and I'm doing this interview, am I looking for a track record of success or a track record of failure? Okay, I'm looking really for a track record of innovation. Okay, a track record of somebody who's not process-based, but someone who is idea-based. They can't seem to, one of the elements of a real entrepreneur, one of the characteristics of a real entrepreneur in my mind is they're virtually unemployable. Because they come into any situation and they're like, why are you doing it that way? Look, we could do this. And why are you in this business? You can be over here and it could be so much bigger. And you can't fit them in a process. They just don't go. So I look, and it's interesting you could put it between, am I looking for success or failure? In the Atlanta market, entrepreneurs are looked at much like a snapshot. If you go to Silicon Valley, entrepreneurs are looked at. Entrepreneurism is looked at like a movie. All right. So successes in Atlanta will get you more investments. It'll get you more investments pretty virtually anywhere. Failures in Atlanta would make it difficult to then get investment going forward because they look at it and go, oh, look, he failed. That's not true in California. They look at it and they go, look how much he's learned. Now, it's up to the person. Many people don't learn from their failures, but this idea of constantly trying is part of an entrepreneur's DNA. I mean, they can't help it. So I do look for that. So I'll look for either side, and I'm fine with either one. Really am. We'll get into another characteristic or one of the criteria that I look for. The things that I'm looking that I don't want to see is, you hear this stuff. We just saw this as you're going through your MBA here. Is you saw in the when we got into this high unemployment and we got into this economic downturn, you would read things like, well, this is probably going to mean that there are a lot of people are going to start companies, right? Well, I don't like those kind of people because a lot of times they're starting companies. Lots of times, not all the time. There's never say never and never say always, okay? You get people that come to me and they'll say, the real reason they're starting a company is because they couldn't find the job and they couldn't think of anything else to do, so they kind of had this idea they've been running around their head and they figured they'll start a company. And I'm like, not with my money. Not with my money. I don't want entrepreneurism to be the last resort. I want it to be the first call to feel like I'm anxious unless I do it.